Yeah, hello everybody. Welcome to the last lecture in this semester. First of all, I again want to advertise the talk Mr. Ran is giving, and he sent me already his slides about the topic he will talk about afterwards. And yeah, well, this will be definitely something where you just apply what you hopefully has learned in this lecture. You will find many diagrams which you also have seen during this lecture. So not the diagrams, the time series. So the numbers where are interest rates, inflation, business cycle, and so on. So you are welcome and invited to join at 12:15 just in this room. And yeah, then what we want to do today is to do some exercises. And we started on Tuesday with the growth, and now we come to inflation. And what you will see, hopefully, is that conceptually, the calculation which I will do now in some minutes with inflation are conceptually the same which we have done when we were talking about real and nominal growth. It's nothing else than calculating growth rates. And to my surprise, in my exams, if I pose a question with the growth rates, then the performance of the students is quite well. And if I pose the questions due to the inflation, which is conceptually the same mathematics behind it, the outcome is much worse. I don't know why. Well, we see. Now this one and this one, cut this and copy, paste. So we have two products, A and B, and the price index and the given weights. You should just calculate inflation rates in T1 and T2. In T3, we expect an inflation rate as high as the average inflation rate of the former 2 years. And what else? Then I just add here something nice. Or let me write this. This I can also do. Or this one. So, and up. Assume real interest rates in t equals 3 are 10%. Calculate the nominal interest rates in t equals 3. And what this is about, we will talk just in a minute. First of all, we want to calculate the inflation rates. And for this, I also go to Excel because we have done some examples within the lecture. So let's up. So what did we have? We have 1, 0, 1, 2. This is time t, and we have A, and we have B, and we have 4, 12, 4, and 8, 8, 12. 4, 8, 4. We have 0.25, and we have 8, 8, 12. 8. Oh yeah, sorry. Yep, thank you. 4, 12, 4. Okay. And this one. So, and some years ago, in a task in the exam, I left this part open. If I do not put a number in there, which number it has to be? This column with the weight of good B. There, I didn't put a number. All together, we have yes, and then this has to be. If I have two goods, yeah, then which number it has to be in this case? No, to only two goods, yeah. Yeah, only two goods. So 1 minus, yes, yes, yeah, and unfortunately, 10% of the students couldn't, yeah, calculate this, and this was a pity because then the starting point is missing. But anyhow, we talked a lot about aggregated macroeconomic numbers. We also talked about indices, and also we talked about what is consumer price index. And there we said this is a weighted average, arithmetic average. And this you hopefully have also learned in mathematics, in statistics, and I would say also in controlling and whatever other lectures you have where you are calculating aggregated numbers. These numbers are very, very often just weighted sums of some other numbers. And then by definition, all the weights have to sum up to 1. Okay, then what we need in order to calculate inflation, task A, is that we calculate the value of our basket. What do I have to do? You, you, yes, yes, that we have to do. So where's my mouse? There's my mouse, and there. Maybe somebody is entering, I don't know. Therefore, I just open the chat. And then we go inside when I find my mouse here. So this is 4 times 0.25 plus 8 times 0.75, and this is supposed to be 7. Okay. So then we can calculate the index, and you know we are just free to set 1 year or one point in time as 100. Let's take this one as 100, and then this means that 9 to 7 has to be equal to the index of t equals 1 relative to 100. So this one is then nothing else than 9 over 7 times the former index. And this I can copy downward here, and so I end up with these index here. What is then inflation? Inflation is then just the relative change of my index. So this should be then 28.57%. Okay, so equal this over 100 minus 1 is 28.57%, and the same we have here. So if I click inside here, then you see this is just 142 over 128 minus 1. In a minute, I put it also on the slide. Pardon? Yeah, for sure. Yes, I do it now. So now we take this one here, copy and paste. So here we are. Yeah, and then in order to be complete, let's say this 7, for example, is 0.4 plus 8 times 0.75. Let's say that this 142 is 10 over 9 times 128.57, and no, this one for example is 142.86 minus 128.57 over 128.57, or this is equal to 128.57 minus 1. Well, and I mentioned it many times, hopefully, that this is a digital exam and you are allowed to use digital tools, because I really want that you learn this. But be careful. Maybe in the exam I give you this number here, the 142, and then maybe you should calculate backwards this 8 here, so that you don't find any number here, but you find a number on the right. If you compare this with the example where we calculated the nominal and real growth rates, there I didn't give you the index numbers, I gave you the growth rates, and then you had to calculate backwards. And so please be careful that you don't think, well, just 2-3 days before the exam, I just create my own Excel file with all the formulas. Think of it. There are, I don't know, the number of cells is 20 or something like this. And then you can do statistics. And you can think of how many cells I have to give you, so you are able to calculate all the free cells. So there are many, many combinations. And I don't think that it is a good idea to calculate the 150 possible combinations I can think of, and then you find within 90 minutes the right Excel file you have to use. If you are able to do this, great. I wouldn't manage this task. So think of it that you conceptually know what to do, and if you want to use mathematical tools, then please try it for 1-2 weeks in advance. And also I will give you here questions which you also can just calculate by hand. Yeah. Maybe. It's not only about calculation. So to speak, a theoretical question could be explain the difference between real and nominal growth. Something like this. Yeah. And I will give you also some questions for revision. Okay. So then we are done. And now we want to calculate the average inflation. And again, as I meant also at the other one, mathematically exact. And this sentence you will find also in the exam when I pose questions like this. And in this case here, you definitely have to calculate it with the right formulas, because if you take only the approximation and then you would say, okay, it's 28 plus 11 divided by 2, this is the average inflation rate. Since the inflation rates are much larger than 10% in this case, the error you would make with this approximation is quite large. Okay, so for this, we then have to remember how to calculate an average growth rate. For this, I have to calculate the geometric mean of not the growth rates, but the growth factors. Okay, then growth factor, and the growth factor is just 1 plus the growth rate. Is 1 plus this, and let's do not use percentage. Then these are the growth factors. Then we calculate the geometric mean. Here you have, oops, just a direct formula for this, and then you obtain the average inflation rate just as the other way around. Inflation factor minus 1 is minus 1, and here we do it in percent. This I also copy. Zip. Yep. For sure. For sure. For sure you can. Yes, yes. And for this, I would recommend, if you try to do it with mathematical tools, then just take a screenshot, copy it within your PDF file or a Word file anyway. And then I would recommend do something like I have done here, that you do not have to explain every cell, but that you at some part write down what is to do, or you just give me the general formula. How is the inflation rate calculated? Give me the general formula, and then I know, okay, you have done this, because otherwise you have the risk that you just make within the formula some mistake, and then maybe all numbers you create are wrong. And if I see only wrong numbers without explanation, it's hard for me then to give you any point. Therefore, just a sentence, just a little explanation that I know what you are doing. Okay? So these are the growth factors, and where we are, this is then the average inflation rate. So this is 1 plus 28.57%. The average inflation factor is then 1 plus 28.57% times 1 plus 11.11% and taking the root, because this is the geometric mean of the inflation factors. And then you obtain the inflation rate as 1.2857 times 1.1111 root minus 1. So, and then this one here, which concept do I have to apply now when I want to calculate the dependence between nominal and real interest rates now? Not nominal and real growth, but nominal and real interest rates. Just go backward in your slides. Then when we talked about money and then when we introduced interest rates, there we, yes, Fisher equation. Yep. And this could also be a general theoretical question. Explain the dependence between real and nominal interest rates via the Fisher equation. Well, and then it's not much you have to do then. Write down the Fisher equation and explain me what it means. Then you are done. So this was 1 plus the real interest rates is 1 plus nominal interest rates over 1 plus inflation rate. Real interest rates, nominal interest rates, inflation. Well, and we have all numbers. Here we have our inflation rate, 19.52%, and I gave you the year interest rates of 10%. And what you have to do, you have to solve this equation for nominal interest rates. So nominal interest rates are 1 plus real interest rates plus 1 plus inflation minus 1. Then we just put in our numbers, 1 plus 10% times 1 plus 19.52% minus 1. And this is, well, let's put it here, nominal interest rates is then 1 plus 10% times 1 plus 1952. Here I missed the brackets. Minus 1, and let's put it in percent, 31.48. Yes, this was here the task. So in t equals 3, we expect an inflation rate as high as the average inflation rate, and we assume that real interest rates will be 10%, and then of course you have to take these two numbers. Okay. So, and this is then, yeah, somehow how I also construct my questions, that more or less I start with more or less just a revision what we have, what you already more or less have seen one-to-one. Then, well, you can maybe assume that calculating an average interest rate is a bit harder, so to speak. This could be then a part B. And then in the end of my question, I connect somehow some different topics of the lecture with each other, or I pose a further question where you hopefully show me some understanding. This is the way I do it. Yeah. So, and then, yeah, I know, and this is, yeah, fair enough for everybody. Let's say our marketing experts, they say, wow, microeconomics and macroeconomics, these are not my favorite topics. Okay, this is okay. This is definitely okay. But you have to go through this, and hopefully you will successfully go through this. And then you also can think of, well, as I know that more or less the starting part of my tasks, I don't say that this is then the easier part, but is more like what I already directly have seen in the lecture. Then maybe start with these questions, and then also from your own expectations, you have a feeling, well, here I know that this is more or less right what I've done. And then you already know, well, I have already something like 40, 50 points of 100. And in the other parts, I will also write some good things. And then you know, well, I've passed. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Let's go to the next one. And which one? So then let's take, this one is maybe shocking for you because, on Tuesday or even we start last week when I was talking about, this decision, where comes the supply of labor and where comes the general demand for labor from profit maximization and utility maximization. And then I hopefully showed you that this is one-to-one what you have learned in microeconomics. Well, we are almost through our lecture now, and this question is, would take me that long that I cannot manage it today. So you don't have to learn these theoretical part. But what I want you to know is that you, yeah, can qualitatively, as we did it in the lecture, where comes demand and supply of labor. And especially that you also know, well, we directly obtain the negative dependence for labor demand and wages from profit maximization, and that for labor supply from the consumption spare time calculation, we have to make, yeah, in the end, the assumption that the substitution effect is larger than the income effect, and that this is an empirical fact which we find in societies. So this dependence we do not directly obtain from the optimization process. Okay, but you do not have to deal with these evil Cobb-Douglas production and utility functions. So, and then we will go to the general ISLM model. And let's take this one. So, a little bit larger. Okay, so better. So, first of all, show that average consumption is falling with increasing income. Well, what you have to do, yeah, well, just calculate average consumption. Average consumption is consumption over income. And then you calculate this and you obtain 5 over y minus plus 0.75 y over y. This cancels, is 5 over y plus 0.75. Well, if I only pose this question, show that this is the case, then of course you can do it mathematically, that you calculate the first derivative, and this is minus 5 over y squared, and this is of course smaller than 0 because of the minus sign in front of it, because yeah, we do not deal with negative incomes in this case, because this makes economically no sense, and therefore a monotonic decreasing function. Monotonic, monotonic, yeah, decreasing function. Well, maybe in an exam, then I show formally that average consumption is a falling falling with increasing income, and explain economically. So, why do we model our function like this? What is the economic reason? This is something similar as in the labor supply, that empirically we find that the part of the consumption of GDP is the less, the richer our society is. And if this is the case, if we find this in the data, then our mathematical mathematic modeling should also show these effects. Well, and in this funny 5 minutes videos you find in the internet, there you find the explanation. Well, we introduce this 5 here. This is the autonomous consumption. So the part of the consumption function which is not depending on income. And then they explain it as, well, you can interpret this like the existence minimum. So everybody has to eat if he has income or if he has no income. Well, this is a nice little micro explanation for this, but this has nothing to do with the macroeconomic model. The reason in a macroeconomic sense is that we find this empirical fact that richer societies consume relatively less. So be careful to ask these nice little videos. So, question B. Determine IS and LM curve. What do I have to do? Yeah, and for this, you have to have learned what is the ISLM model about. It is about simultaneous equilibrium on the commodity market and on the money market. Great. So, and then I know IS curve represents equilibrium at the commodity market. And then I know this is a demand-driven model. We are now in the Keynesian theory. So equilibrium at the commodity market, we obtain that we at first look at the demand side. Demand we have calculated overall in a society is consumption plus investment plus government expenditure. And then we put it equal to Y to our supply side. So IS is then nothing else than C plus I plus G is overall demand in our economy equals Y itself. So this is demand and this is the equilibrium condition. And this is the ansatz you have to do. And now you can just look at your explicit formulas you have. So C is then 5 plus 0.75y plus 5 minus 100i is plus 5. Government expenditure is y itself. So all independent parts, this is 15. And here we have the y 0.75y we put to the other side. So we obtain 15 minus 100i is 1 minus 0.75 times y is 0.25. So in order to obtain only a y on the right side, we have to multiply by 4. So y is 60 minus 400i. So since I do by my own a live calculation, you please also calculate that I do not make that many mistakes. Hopefully. So LM, you have already mentioned equilibrium at the money market. So just L, depending on income and interest rates, is money supply. Then we just put in our explicit functions. So 2y minus 200i equals 50. Separating y and I, we obtain 2y is 50 plus 200i. Dividing by 2, y is 25 plus 100i. This is our LM curve. C, question? This is just given. This is the given money demand. So overall equilibrium, what do I have to do? Yes. So in quotation marks, IS equals LM. So 60 minus 400i equals 25 plus 100i. So plus 400i minus 25 is 35 equals 500i. Dividing by 500 is I star equals 7%. Why 7%? Well, 35 over 500 is the same as 70 over 1000 and is 7 over 100, so 7%. I star is 35 over 500. Of course, you can also put it in your calculator. Anyhow. And I really recommend that you use these tools. You can do it also in Excel. Anyway, I, for myself, have programmed all these equations, and so I only have to interchange the numbers, pressing enter, and I obtain the results. But this still means that you, yeah, have to know what to do, and this is maybe also a good point to show you what you will do in the future. Well, we have now done all these calculations here by hand. Well, let's calculate also the equilibrium income. How can I do this? Yes. Maybe here 25 plus 100 times 7%. Okay. And this is 32. Or you can also put it in the IS function. No? And there you have 60 minus 400 times 7, so 60 minus 28 is, of course, also 32. So this is of course also 60 minus 400 times 7%. Well, and in the future, and this is my forecast, in the future, our artificial intelligence chatbots and so on, they will, it will be possible that you then, for example, just take your smartphone and say, well, here I have two equations, this one and this one. Please equate these equations and calculate interest rates and income. And in my forecast, in 1 or 2 years, this is possible. And the nice thing is, when you will go just 1 or 2 weeks before the exam, in all the videos I uploaded, then you definitely will find that I have made mistakes. Definitely. Because I'm a human being. And then hopefully you see, well, oh, at this question he has forgotten a 2 or something like this. And the nice little thing about the computers is they do not make these mistakes. Your pocket calculator, if you are adding numbers, does not make any mistake. Maybe it doesn't function, that you don't get an output, but it makes no mistakes adding 25 numbers. But you should still be able to calculate by hand adding 25 numbers. Because why? Because then you have an idea, is this output you obtain from your pocket calculator, is this reasonable? And the same we will have in the future when you just ask your chatbot, please solve this linear system. And then you get an output, and then you can judge the output and say, well, I looking at this system, well, this output is reasonable. Not because you have exactly done all the calculations, but you know what are the calculations behind this. Okay, then let's go on. Now we want to increase government expenditure by 1. I take another color. I think I can take red. D. So of course, you can then change this number here from 5 to 6 and you redo all the calculations you have done. That's possible, and this is up to you. Then you will hopefully end with the right result. But what you also can do is you just say, well, I have conceptually understood what I'm done, what I have to do. So I don't have to redo all the calculations because conceptually I have already done these calculations. So what is changing? This number is changing from 5 to 6. If this is a 6, 5 plus 6 is not 15, but is 16. If this is a 16, then times 4 is 64. So this is a 64. If this is a 64, 64 minus 25 is 39. And then equilibrium interest rates is 7.8%. So if this is a 7.8%, then I obtain here 32.8. And also this is 7.8%. Here you have to be a little careful because here also the function changes. Not only the input of the interest rate, but also this, because this has, of course, also to be a 64. So interest rates are increasing to 7.8, and income is increasing to 32.8. So delta y is 32.8 minus 32 is 0.8. We have a push via fiscal policy of 0.8. Why do I calculate this? Well, I post only also the question, compare this increase with the pure commodity market model. So what does it mean? This means that what would happen if we skip in the commodity market this interest rate dependence. So, and then we just in the Keynesian commodity market model. And what does this mean? This means we have a fiscal impulse just by the fiscal multiplier, and this we calculated to 1 over 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume. Commodity market or pure commodity market, there we had change in income caused by an increase of government expenditure is just 1 over 1 minus CY. This was the fiscal multiplier. Well, CY is 0.75. So what we obtain is 1 minus 0.75 is 1 over 0.25, and this is just 4. So within the commodity, pure commodity market, then we would obtain delta Y equals 4 times delta G, and this is 1, so 4. And this you should now, and this is again some qualitative question, you should explain. Why does this happens? Well, and this we had within the lecture. Now you have to compare your two models. The pure commodity market model and the model where we add the money market. And especially when we add the money market, we connected the money market and the commodity market via interest rates. So what happens in the ISLM model? Qualitatively, we increase government demand by delta G equals 1. This, of course, gives us a push on total income, but now we have the connection with the money market. And this means that via the LM curve, we have an increase of interest rates. We also see the push was on the interest rates 7.7% up to 7.8%. And what does this mean? Now we have a feedback to our commodity market that investment is depending on interest rates. Yep. No, this is my handwriting. Yep. So interest rates are rising, and if interest rates are rising, then investment is going down because we have a negative dependence of investment on interest rates. And this is the so-called crowding out effect. So the reason that the impulse on Y is less in the ISLM model compared to the pure commodity market model is that due to the money market and the LM curve, delta G goes up means also that I is going up, and this means on the commodity market that I is going down, and this means Y is going down. So this is the so-called crowding out effect. Public demand is lowering via interest rates private investment. Well, and here also you have some part C, let's say, of my question. Do not only do the calculations, but also show me that you know what these calculations mean. Okay. Part E. So base central bank increases the nominal amount of money by delta M equals 10. Well, we have also that price level should be fixed by 1. So what we then know is that real money supply is increased by 10 from 50 to 60. again, you can redo all the calculations now with 60 and not 50. But also you can say, I have done all the calculations already. So what we then do is, where is something changing within my calculations? This is just here. 50 is now a 60. Here on the right, there is a 60. So here is the money market equilibrium. Money supply is now increased from 50 to 60. If this happens, then this is a 60. 60 divided by 2 is 30. So this is a 30. Now this I should have added. Use the starting numbers so that you should not use now the increase of government expenditure from 5 to 6, but that you use the initial equations of part B. Yep. Hopefully in an exam I also add this. If I don't, then it's my mistake. And then if you use the other numbers, then I see it. So this means 30 here. Then we have 60 minus 30. So I star will then be 6%. What is then equilibrium income? Also, this 25 has to be a 30. This is now 6%. 30 plus 100 times 6% is then 36. Or on this other side, you have to put in here 6%. So 60 minus 6 times 4 is 25, is 24. 60 minus 24 is, of course, also 36. So then interest rates go down to 6% and Y is increasing to 36. Okay, question? So, and now I have the general question about all the models we have talked about. Please explain the difference of the policy measures we have introduced, fiscal policy and monetary policy. Why do we have different effects on income? And this we can do graphically. Let's start with just the commodity market. How did it look like? YD and Y, all possible equilibrium. Y equals YD, demand, And what happens within this model if we make fiscal policy delta G plus delta G? This meant that this function goes up. YD prime, and then this would be our impulse to the right via the fiscal multiplier. This is, in our example, this push increasing government expenditure by 1, fiscal multiplier by 4 is an increase of income by 1 times 4 is 4. Yep. Yeah, of course, roughly. Well, then let's go to the ISLM model. Here we had LM IS. In this model, an increase of delta G meant we have to shift to the upper right our IS curve. This shifts upwards. If this is shifting upwards, what do we have? This would be, again, this total right shift, the impulse, which we can identify with the pure commodity market. But crowding out effect means now interest rates are increasing. If interest rates are increasing, this means that we have to, so to speak, walk on the LM curve. So our impulse is only just this red part here. So increase of I dampens the impulse on Y. Dampens the impulse on Y. So, and then let's go to the AS-AD model. There we argued, due to an increase of government expenditure, we obtain a shift to the upper right of the AD curve. Again, this here we could now identify with the impulse in the ISLM model. So let's take this in red. ASAD. Yeah, let's put it just above this one. But now we are allowed to increase prices. So the demand push can now be partially absorbed by increasing prices. So everybody of us obtains additional 100 euros or 1,000 euros. Then hopefully we do not buy cars, but we start to buy bicycles. Within the ISLM model, we would assume, well, the bicycle producer just increase their production. But now they know, well, everybody has an additional 1,000 euros, so I will produce some more bicycles, but I also will increase by 20% the price of bicycles. And this is here the movement along the AS curve. So the impulse, let's take green, would be then only this one. So the fiscal impulse is now additionally dampened by price increases. Well, and this is not, didn't pose the question within this task, but then we could also think of the long run ASAD model. And if we have the long run ASAD model, we argued that also our AS curve would be shifted upwards, the medium term AS curve. Well, in the long run, the fiscal impulse is totally absorbed by price increases, because then we assume only the general circumstances in our society determine the output. Yeah, short, medium run, so to speak. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then, yeah, we are more or less done. Here you have also some other, well, quantity theory yield curve. We have, yeah, very much spoken within the lecture. Just look at these tasks because we are running out of time. I also, yeah, gave you examples within the lecture, and talking about GDP magic square, we will do in my little revision of the lecture I will do right now with you. That I can also, oops, what is this? This one I do not want to save. This one I want to save. And this one also, that I later on can upload it. And now I want to do a revision. This one. So we will have a fast ride to the whole lecture. Well, we skipped the analytical part of labor demand and labor supply. All the other stuffs is maybe a topic within the exam in January. But let's go through it. So, yeah, we started with some general introduction or motivation. Of course, I do not pose questions like this, that you should define me what is economics in general about it. Yeah, I think this is not very surprising. But the difference between positive and normative issues please, please take this seriously, not only for this lecture, but for your life. Because you will meet in the future many, many people who say, I definitely know how everything works. And then be skeptical and think, well, I have learned some things, and I actually also have learned that we are free thinking people, and that at some part we could act not like the models you have in mind. So this was this general discussion about conceptually the Keynesian theory and the neoclassical theory. Both theories are totally logically built, but they make very different assumptions. And if you then say the world is always functioning as like the neoclassical model, then this is a judgment. I use this model now, and then you are in the normative part when you say this is the truth, so to speak. But the analysis within the neoclassical model, this is just scientific stuff. Then you have made your assumptions, and then you say, well, given these assumptions, increasing minimum wages just increases unemployment. And here we had some examples for this. Well, I do not ask you the difference between micro and macro. This was also for no, motivation. Then I made this historical introduction of the circular flow. But yeah, keep this picture in mind. You have not to learn this in detail, but the concept of the circular flow. And well, this we just did when we talked then about Walras law, about if n minus 1 markets are in equilibrium, then the last market also has to be in equilibrium. This is more or less the same concept we have here within the circular flow. If here, 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 and here we have inflows equals outflows, then also here you have to have equals inflow equals outflow. So what is conceptually the circular flow? GDP, definition of GDP. Of course, you have to know this. And here also you have to be careful if you ask ChatGPT, what is the GDP? 9 out of 10 times you get the right answer, but 1 out of 10 times you do not get the right answer. And there I think we will also have a development, because if you take Wikipedia in this general concepts is very, very good. And for this, I would expect that these AI chatbots will improve, that you then start to program these chatbots in a way that you say, well, if you get a question like this, please do not take your total information with which you are trained, but take only the relevant information. But this will take, I don't know, some months, some years, but this will be the case in the future. I really expect this. But this, if you think about this, this does not mean that you don't have to know it anymore. So what is gross domestic product? Then production expenditure income approach. GDP, sorry, I'm in German. Production, expenditure, and income approach. Production, we had services, roughly 55, industrial production, roughly 25, then construction, roughly 5%, and trade, roughly 15%. This we also did in the lecture. Expenditure, private consumption, roughly 55, government consumption, roughly 20, investment, roughly 20%, and X minus M, roughly 5%, and income, which number gave I here to you here? This was labor share only, roughly 2/3 or 70% or something like this. So these are the numbers I want to have you maybe within the exam. And GDP for Germany maybe roughly 4 trillion euros. Or let's say the world, roughly 100 trillion US dollars. I don't know if I have mentioned this in the lecture. Okay. So this is then more or less also here just this question here. Then we come to the magic square. Yep. Steady and appropriate economic growth, though. Relative change of real GDP, roughly 1 to 3% in a quantitative way. Price level, relative change of consumer price index, roughly 2% per annum to be correct. High level unemployment, unemployment rate, roughly 2 to 4%. These are all values for Germany. If you go to China, of course, you would have to have other targets, or to the United States. External balance comes from history and fixed exchange rates. So maybe possible targets, trade balance equal to 0, current account equal to 0, non-volatile exchange rates, or what else can we say? No large economic impact from abroad, but in Germany, none of these, but in Germany, we follow none of these targets. Because, well, you can say if you have fixed exchange rates, then it would be a good idea to have a balanced current account or trade balance, because otherwise you always have to intervene when you have push on your exchange rate. Okay, about real and nominal growth, we have talked in the last lectures, also when we talked about inflation rate, the example we did today, the difference between CPI and GDP deflator. This is again labor market, money, labor supply. So we look at the CPI because we want to earn tomorrow that much that we can buy that much tomorrow as today, while the enterprises look more or less on GDP deflator because they have to calculate the wholesale price. All prices are their input and output prices. What else? Unemployment. What is unemployment? And especially here the different types of unemployment: frictional, seasonal, what else? Cyclical unemployment and structural unemployment. What is this? Then we had this implementation of further goals: balanced income distribution, sustainable ecological conditions, and the sustainable fiscal budget. This is what we are talking right now in Berlin every day about. Business cycle. What is the business cycle? There we had also the concept of potential output. Remember this we used also in the neoclassical view. And money, what is money? Functions of money, motives of money holding. From these motives we obtain money demand. Once the Keynesian money demand, and the other one from quantity theory of money demand. Quantity theory of money, we obtained the classical money demand function only depending on y, and the split of real and nominal variables via the classical dichotomy. Money multiplier, money creation, monetary, so to speak, classical monetary policy measures, and then what we introduced over the last 20 years. There, you don't have to learn everything what happens, but so in general, what happens? That we started to buy government bonds, that we decreased interest rates to zero, and all these things. Yield curve, of course, I talked a lot about the yield curve. And then we come to our theoretical part, Keynesian cross. And I think all these theoretical models, if you understand these diagrams, then I also think you have understood the model itself. So if you can explain this, what happens if we make an increase of government expenditure, upward shifting of demand curve, and then also in the ISLM curve, well, that you can explain this diagram and what happens, this shift of these two curves, if we make monetary policy or fiscal policy. And also the ASAD model, this we had today when we were talking about the effects there. In general, the shift, upward shift. And if we add here also the long run AS curve, that we then also obtain the AS shift upwards and then end up just with these money price increase. Sorry. And the last one is, well, what is a neoclassical production function? Also, if you can explain this diagram, why is production looking like this? You have understand this. Well, in this part, I said you don't have to, do the analytical part of this, but the concept, why do we have increasing labor supply with real wages and decreasing labor demand with real wages? This in general you should be able to explain. And then we had in the end this overall diagram. Well, in general you should understand it, but also you can think of, I cannot pose you the question, please explain me the neoclassical model as a question in the exam, because this will take you 30 minutes, 40 minutes or something like this. And then I cannot pose any other questions. But maybe I give you some part of this and then I ask you, yeah, well, what happened? Because within this model, we also discussed monetary and fiscal policy. Okay, so then we are through all this and where do I have it? And here, this I will upload for you. These are some questions for revision you can then do. Maybe in January, go through it. Additional possible questions. Well, I will not give you the solutions for these questions. You go through all this, or you can go through this by your own. Please do it together. Talk about this. And if you have then problems, then of course you can ask me. But I won't answer to questions like, well, I do not understood number 3a. Please explain me. This I will not answer. But if you then say, well, at this part here, why is this happening? And with a specific question, of course, I will help you. Then maybe this is, oh shit, no, here it is. This is in German, but I think you will manage it, how to do the electronic part of scanning your paper, or you are writing directly on your laptop or iPad or whatever. Yeah, please try it once or twice before you write the exam, because my quota or my dropout quota is 0%. From a technical part of view, everybody managed it through the last 3 years to hand in the PDF file, and hopefully this will stay at 0% dropout quota due to technical problems. Okay? And then what is this about? This is a shark. And what does this have to do with macroeconomics? This is a saltwater fish. Yeah. What is this? Salmotruta. I have also to look it up what it is in English because I only know it in German. And in English, it is brown trout. Okay, this I learned. It's a trout. And where does a trout is living? Freshwater, so sweetwater, yeah. And what is this? This is a Plachites flesus. Let's see. What is this in English? In German, it's a flounder, and in English, European flounder. Okay, this is a flounder, and where is it living? Saltwater, and this is a special one. This is just living outside here. And what happens just in our area? Sweetwater and saltwater is coming together. And this is then called in English, White Sea. This I have to just translate. Oh, therefore we just use. This is brackish water. So brackish water is just where you have the mixture of our rivers going into the sea. So brackish water. So I think you still wonder what has this things to do with macroeconomics. Well, let's take the United States. This should be the United States, okay? Somehow. Well, here's Alaska upwards here. So, and here at the Great Lakes, you have Chicago. And here you have Harvard, you have MIT, you have Princeton, some other ones of the Ivy League universities in the United States. And here you have a school of thought in economics, yeah, more or less founded by Hayek, Schumpeter, so European German economists, followed by Friedman, Samuelson, and so on. Lucas, why do I put them? These are all Nobel laureates. And they mainly had a view that the world is functioning in a neoclassical way. And here you have some other famous economists, especially Krugman, Stieglitz. These are also Nobel laureates, and they are known that they have more or less a Keynesian view on the world. And therefore, we say Keynesian economics, so to speak, is saltwater economics, and neoclassical view, due to the guys in Chicago, is sweetwater economics, because this is situated at the Great Lakes. And then I will introduce myself. Well, I'm not a Nobel laureate, but I also talk about macroeconomics, and I'm, so to speak, a brackish water economist because I think that you should always look at which state we are just in our time. And there is some time arguing in the Keynesian way, and there is some time arguing more in the neoclassical view. And hopefully, you have learned within this lecture also the different views, the different explanations, how the economy is working, and that you are now possible to make your own judgment. This is what this lecture was about. Only 15 minutes overtime. I have to fetch my lecturer in the main building. So maybe you stay here, would be nice.